My name is Marikit Santiago. I'm an artist from Western Sydney. I work with oil paint and I often collaborate with my children who are my muses as well. My work is deeply invested in the autobiographical, so I draw on my experience as a Filipino raised in Western Sydney and now raising biracial children. My work considers all of those really confusing feelings that I felt about my cultural identity. Sometimes I felt really proud of being Filipino, sometimes I felt really ashamed, and sometimes it made me feel really left out. And so when I look at my children, I hope that they don't feel all those feelings, but I also don't want to shelter them from exploring all of those ideas about their identity. I just hope that they can learn to understand it and accept it and know that it's okay to feel all those different feelings. I feel most confident making work about experiences that I've lived myself. There'll be stories that happened to me in my paintings. I don't feel confident, making work about things that have happened to other people. I make work that's happened to me. Whenever I have an exhibition, I'm always really humbled by people reaching out to me and saying that they really loved seeing part of themselves represented in a gallery where they thought they would never be represented before. I also hope that the younger generation see my children in my paintings and working on my paintings and know that art is for everyone. It's not this elitist thing that people might assume that it is. Art is for everyone. It was never my intention to be an artist. When people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I never said art. It was always, I want to be a doctor. I, really strive to achieve high academic results with that profession as the goal. Once I finished high school, I was accepted into medical science. And about 2 weeks into the degree, I realised that my whole childhood dream of wanting to be a doctor was probably not going to be achievable, or that it was actually not for me. So after I struggled to finish medical science, I then went to art school, but not with the intention of making art my career. I actually really just wanted to see if I was good enough. I realised that art is actually a viable career, and that I did want to make that my career. And so, I worked really hard to excel at art school and now excel in my career. So it's been a bit of a long journey for me to come to this. My childhood dream was shattered, but turns out that, the dream that I never thought was possible is actually possible. So typically my day starts with all the kids' stuff. So getting everyone to school. I like to get all of my household duties done in the morning so that it frees up the rest of the day to work in the studio. So if I am painting, I will spend as much time as I can in the studio, which actually isn't very long between the school bells. And once everyone's home from school, that's it. Before I start any painting, I like to visualize exactly what it's going to look like in my mind before I even start drawing any outlines. It's definitely the most daunting part of the process. So I don't like to start anything until I have a clear image of what the painting will look like in my mind. And once I actually do start painting, my plan doesn't usually veer off that original visualization. I might look at the painting and say it needs something more, or if I need to pull something back, but it really doesn't change much. Or if I've run out of time and I've just got to finish it quickly. I often work on found cardboard, which references a long-standing tradition of the balikbayan box, where Filipino migrants are expected to continue to provide aid to their families left in the Philippines. I also use cardboard because I work in a very limited space. I want to paint big, so working with cardboard allows me to fold up the material and work on it in sections and still make a large work. It's also free and light. I work from photographs, which I project onto the surface of the support that I'm working on to get those outlines first, just so that I can get those proportions. Especially at a large scale, it can be quite difficult to do that freehand. When I start a portrait, I like to start with the eyes, because I think the eyes really define a person's face. So if I can get the eyes right, then I know that it'll look like the person when I work around, and then sort of working in layers to create the right tones, the right color. The last thing that I usually do in a portrait is the hair, which is kind of my favorite part. So it's sort of like I leave it till last, and that's like my prize for finishing the portrait. I use oil paint because of its rich color. So despite its long lead time, it really does give me that rich color that I love to work with. It's also quite flexible, so I can manipulate it in the way that I want it to work for me. If I want to have like some rich, bold color, I can do that. If I want a really thin glaze, I can do that. Working with oil allows me to achieve that high detail that I like to achieve in my work. It takes me a long time to finish a painting because I work with oil, which has a long process. So for a really large scale painting, it'll be months of, applying layers and layers and waiting for them to dry. Finishing a painting is usually driven by a deadline, because if I wasn't given a deadline, I would probably tinker for ages. And honestly, I just have to walk away. Sometimes I've worked on a painting for months and months, and maybe I could keep going a little bit, but sometimes I just got to walk away from it and then just call it finished. My tips for students creating portraits, and these are things that I was taught in art school, and it might not be what you think, but the biggest tip that I learned was that when you're trying to create a likeness for something, whether it's a portrait or anything else that you're drawing or painting, it's not about what your hands can do. It's not about how steady your hands are. It's not even really about, what material you're using, whether it's high quality or low quality. The biggest thing is that it's about what your eyes can see and how you look for all the visual clues around the subject that you're painting to get those correct proportions and angles. So even though you might know that, a person's ear is there, but if it's not in the reference that you're working from, don't draw it, don't paint it. Always focus on what it is that you're seeing. Look for all those visual clues to get that accurate likeness.